My 10-year-old daughter almost died after my family abandoned her during a severe allergic reaction. They didn't call an ambulance. They went on a luxury day trip with the other kids instead. I didn't shout. I took action. 3 hours later, their lives started to unravel. My Monday started like any other. The printer jammed, someone was crying in the bathroom, and my coffee tasted like regret mixed with pen ink. I was just about to fake optimism for another meeting when my phone buzzed. An unknown number, local area code. Normally, I'd let it go straight to voicemail, but a strange, insistent pull in my gut made me answer. "Hello," I said, my voice already sounding a little strained. "Is this Ingrid Taylor?" A calm, professional voice asked. "Yes, this is she." "Miss Taylor, this is St. Anani's Medical Center. We have your daughter, Piper Taylor. She's stable now, but she had what appears to be a severe allergic reaction." My chair scraped back so hard it echoed in the suddenly silent office. "What?" The word was barely a whisper. "She's alert and talking," the woman continued, her tone steady but not unkind. "But we'd like you to come right away. Do you know where we're located?" "Yes," I managed, my mind racing. 2 hours from here." "All right. Drive carefully, please. When you arrive, ask for the pediatric unit. Someone will meet you at reception." "Okay," I said, my voice cracking. "I'm leaving now." "Good. We'll see you soon." Click. For a terrifying second, I just stood there, phone still pressed to my ear, hearing the faint echo of my own frantic breath. The world had gone too quiet, too still. My coffee was still steaming on my desk. Down the hall, someone laughed, a sound so normal, so wrong. It felt like I was bleeding through from another life. Then, my body took over. I grabbed my bag, my keys, and I moved. No thought, just raw, animal instinct. In the elevator, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I tried to tell myself it was just adrenaline, not fear. I chanted, "Piper is fine. She's stable," like a mantra, clinging to the words the woman had said. Stable sounded like safety, didn't it? But even as I hit the parking lot, my heart knew better. The highway blurred. The GPS voice was a calm, detached companion, politely guiding me through a spiraling panic attack. "Turn left in 2 miles," it chirped, as if that were the hardest part of my day. I tried Mom. Voicemail. Dad. Voicemail. Then Helena's name lit up on the screen. I put it on speaker, my eyes locked on the road ahead. "Helena, Ingrid, you should see this water." Her voice burst through the car speakers, bright and carefree. "It looks like glass. Dad's wearing socks and his sandals again." Her happiness landed in my gut like a cruel joke I didn't get. Wind roared in the background. Kids shouted about shells. "Okay," I said carefully, trying to keep my voice even. "So, you're all together?" "Yep." "Gavin's building some kind of fortress. Lydia's stealing the flags." A light, airy laugh. Chaos in a cute way. My mouth felt dry, tasting of ash. "Right. And Piper? What about her?" "Still light, still breezy." "How is she?" Helena hesitated, a fraction too long. "She's fine." "Fine where?" I pushed. "At the hotel." A beat passed where the world narrowed to the lane stripes and the sound of air through the vents. "At the hotel," I repeated, because sometimes saying a thing twice makes it make sense. "Yeah," she said, like we were discussing luggage. She wasn't in the mood for breakfast. You know how she gets. Headaches, stomach, whatever. Mom said if she didn't want to come, she could stay and cool off. It's no big deal. My brain tried to fit those words into the shape of reality and failed. She didn't want to come, or she couldn't. "Ingrid." Helena's voice tightened, a hint of steel under the forced cheer. "Please don't start." She was being dramatic. She said her throat felt weird, and she didn't want to eat. And then it turned into a whole thing. Mom gave her a choice. I swallowed, felt nothing go down. "So, when you left, she was in the lobby?" "Yeah," Helena confirmed, sitting by the big plant. "The guy at the desk knows us." The highway flickered past. Mile marker, shadow, light. Somewhere, a siren. Far away. Inside the car, just my breathing and hers. "I need to be very clear," I said, hearing how unnervingly calm I sounded, and hating it. "You all went out. Piper stayed behind. Alone. There are staff." Helena snapped quickly, her voice cracking. "She wasn't alone. And we're not gone forever. It's a day trip." I pressed my thumb into the steering wheel until it hurt, just to feel something, anything, that matched the word real. "Helena, the hospital called me." Silence. Wind. A child laughing in the distance. A sound that belonged to a different world entirely. "They said she had a severe allergic reaction," I stated, my voice flat. "She's there now." "No." Helena's reflex was automatic, the way you deny a plate will break as it hits the floor. "No." She does this. She makes it a thing. And then she couldn't breathe. I finished, my voice devoid of emotion. Another silence, longer this time. When she spoke again, the wind in the background was louder, like she'd turned her head away. Mom said. She stopped. Ingrid, are you sure? I'm on my way to her. I could hear her pull in a breath, thin and shaky. Okay. Maybe it's. I'll call you later. I cut her off. Ingrid, wait. But I ended the call. For a few miles, I drove like the road might explain itself if I stared hard enough. Sunlight flashed off other people's windshields. Everyone kept following their lanes, their rules, as if the world hadn't just tilted on its axis. I tried to line their words up in my head. In the lobby by the big plant. We're only gone for the day. It's no big deal. And failed. Somewhere between one exit and the next, the disbelief stopped being a fog and hardened into something cold and heavy. I gripped the wheel and kept going to by the way, if you're still with me and hanging on every word, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps this channel, and I promise more unbelievable stories are coming. By the time I reached St. Anani's, my pulse was thrumming behind my eyes. Inside, too much light, too much white, too much everything. A nurse looked up. You're Piper Taylor's mom? Yes, she's doing okay now. Room 203. I didn't wait for directions. Piper was sitting up, pale and fragile, her eyes glassy, an oxygen tube under her nose. When she saw me, her lip trembled. Mom, she whispered. I rushed to her side. Hey, sweetheart. I told them I couldn't breathe, she said, her voice so small, so hurt. They didn't believe me. My throat tightened. A knot of pure fury. Who didn't? Grandma. Aunt Helena. They said I was making a scene. Her voice wavered, on the verge of tears. Grandma said if I kept it up, I'd have to stay behind. Then they went. I brushed her hair from her forehead. My heart breaking. And then I sat in the lobby. The man at the front desk asked if I was okay. Then everything went blurry. I think he called the ambulance. Her small fingers twitched around the blanket. A fragile bird caught in a storm. You did everything right, I said, holding her close. Everything. Dr. Layton came in, calm and practiced. She's stable, he confirmed. It was a strong reaction, probably a new allergy. She's lucky the staff acted fast. Lucky? That word again. If not for a stranger at the front desk, my daughter would be a headline, a statistic. When she finally drifted off to sleep, exhausted, I stepped into the hall. My phone buzzed. Dad. Ingrid, he said, already exasperated, cutting me off before I could speak. Helena tells us you're making a fuss. She was having an allergic reaction, I said, my voice dangerously calm. You left her. Oh, for heaven's sake. You know how she exaggerates. She stopped breathing. A pause, then the long, put-upon sigh of a man thoroughly inconvenienced. Well, she's fine now, isn't she? No harm done. No harm done. I repeated, my voice sounding strange, alien. You could have killed her. You always overreact, he scoffed. We raised you better than that. Toughen up. The line went dead. I stared at my reflection in the corridor glass, hair messy, eyes rimmed red, an expression carved out of pure disbelief and something new, something cold. Then, without meaning to, I laughed. A small, cracked, broken sound. They'd always taught me that silence was strength. Fine. They were about to learn what silence sounds like when it stops protecting them. 3 hours later, their lives started to unravel. If you want to understand why my family could leave a 10-year-old gasping for air in a hotel lobby, you have to go back decades. Back to when being tough was the only religion we practiced. We lived on a patch of land outside town, the kind of place where paint peeled faster than you could reapply it. My parents called it character. What they really meant was, you don't complain. I was 6 when I learned the rules. I fell off my bike, scraped my knee open. Mom looked at the blood, sighed, and said, you'll live. Dad added, if you can talk, you can walk. Helena, for years older and already fluent in superiority, rolled her eyes. You're such a baby, Ingrid. So, I shut up. Lesson 1. Silence earns you survival. Helena absorbed our parents' philosophy, like oxygen. She could skin her elbow and smile through it. Crying was for amateurs. She wore her toughness like armor and expected me to do the same. Once, when I was 8, I told her I had a stomach ache. She handed me a spoonful of mustard and said, "Cures everything. Don't whine." I I threw up 10 minutes later. She called that proof it worked. She liked being the example, proof that the system functioned. I was the control group that kept failing. Dad loved to say, "You girls will thank us one day." The world doesn't hand out sympathy. He wasn't wrong. It just doesn't hand out decency either. By the time I hit 16, I'd mastered invisibility. I smiled on cue, kept my voice low, and apologized for taking up oxygen. At family dinners, if someone asked how school was, Helena answered for me. If I spoke up, Mom corrected my grammar instead of listening. Eventually, I stopped offering anything that could be corrected, but I was watching. Every time Helena got praised for holding it together, I noticed how her jaw tightened afterward, how she blinked too fast. Even she was cracking under the weight of perfection. She just didn't know how to stop performing. I moved out the day after graduation. It wasn't rebellion. It was self-preservation. I found a small apartment an hour from home and a job in HR. Don't laugh. Yes, I became the person who mediates other people's emotional disasters for a living, and I'm good at it. Turns out, years of managing my parents prepared me for corporate diplomacy. At work, people cried in my office. They were allowed to. No one called them weak. I remember thinking, so this is what air feels like. One afternoon, a coworker thanked me for being so understanding. I nearly burst out laughing. Understanding was just the side effect of hypervigilance. Helena stayed close to home, naturally. She married Alan, a nice enough guy, the kind who thinks turning off lights counts as romance. And together, they turned the old farmhouse into a bed and breakfast. Mom and Dad practically through a parade. Our girls are so successful, meaning Helena, obviously. I got a polite nod whenever I mentioned a promotion. They ran that B&B like a kingdom, fresh flowers, polite smiles, and the family motto printed on invisible wallpaper. No drama under this roof. Guests called it charming. I called it a museum of denial. Every so often, Helena would phone me for little favors. Could I help them update their business website? Could I spot them some money for a water heater until the tourist season picked up? Always temporary, always followed by, "You're such a lifesaver." I'd tell myself it was just being a good daughter, a good sister. Really, it was habit, throwing coins into the wishing well of their approval. Travis, my husband, would shake his head. "You don't owe them anything." "I know," I'd say. And then I'd send the money anyway. Piper was born 5 years later. I remember holding her and thinking, you will never have to apologize for existing. I swore she'd grow up free from the family curse. We'd talk about feelings, even the ugly ones. We'd cry if we needed to. We'd eat pizza on paper plates and call it fine. Mom called that soft parenting. Helena called it coddling. Dad called it nonsense. I called it love. Of course, family gravity always pulls you back. We still saw each other for holidays, birthdays, the occasional Sunday dinner. Every gathering was a polite reenactment of our childhood. Helena dazzling the audience, me applauding from the wings. Mom would say, "Piper's sensitive, just like her mother." The way some people say, tax audit. Piper would flush and look at me, waiting for a rescue. I'd squeeze her hand under the table instead. I told myself it didn't matter, that words were harmless. They weren't. They were seeds, and the soil was still poisoned. Then Helena called about the trip. 3 days at the coast, she'd chirped. "The kids will love it. You could use a break." I hesitated. "I don't know. Piper's got soccer that weekend." "Oh, come on. It's family time. You know, Mom and Dad. They're getting older." She always played that card, guilt with a smile. I looked at Piper, who was practically vibrating at the thought of beaches and cousins. I said yes, because that's what you do when you're trying to prove everything's normal. The night before they left, Piper packed her bag twice. She asked if Grandma would like the bracelet she'd made. "She'll love it," I said. I almost believed it. When they drove away the next morning, I waved until their car disappeared down the street. For a moment, I actually felt grateful. Grateful they wanted her there. Grateful she was part of something bigger. I didn't know I'd just handed her to the same lesson that shaped me. The one that says, feelings are lies, pain is drama, and silence keeps the peace. If I'd listened harder during that phone call, maybe I would have heard the echo of our childhood behind Helena's voice. The same casual cruelty, dressed up as practicality. But you never think the story's repeating until it's too late. You never think they'll do it again until they already have. And somewhere out there, while I was still answering work emails and pretending to be functional, my daughter was sitting in a hotel lobby, learning what tough love really means. That's how we got here. I sat beside Piper's bed, watching her chest rise and fall under a mountain of white sheets. The monitor beeped like a metronome for my nerves. The doctor's words still looped in my head. Another 10 minutes, and the outcome could have been very different. Different as in dead. I stared at Piper's small hand, still dotted with tape and bruises from the fall, and thought, this is what all that toughness buys you. A kid who nearly dies while everyone else takes selfies on the beach. That's when the calm hit me. Not peace, something colder. The kind of calm you get before the needle goes in. I stepped into the corridor. A nurse was charting at the desk. Do you have the local police number? I asked. She blinked, then handed me a card. Everything okay? Not even close, I said and walked away. The dispatcher's voice was polite, bureaucratic, but human. I gave her everything. Names, times, hotel, what Piper had said, what the doctor told me. She asked if I was sure I wanted to file a report against family. I'm sure, I said. They made that choice first. When I hung up, my hands shook, but my voice didn't. I also went online and canceled the small payment I sent my parents every month, my ceremonial tithe for still being the good daughter. Not anymore. Back in the room, the machines hummed, steady and smug. Piper's hair was fanned out like she'd just fallen asleep after swimming. I brushed a strand from her face and whispered, "It's done." She didn't stir, but the monitor beeped on like applause. By morning, she was well enough to go home. I packed her things, thanked the nurses, and drove through 2 hours of silence, thick enough to drown in. It was around lunchtime when my phone finally exploded. 3 missed calls, then a flood of messages. Mom, Dad, Helena. A group call. I let it ring once before answering. Ingrid. Mom's voice hit like static. What have you done? Dad cut in, booming. You called the police on your own parents. Helena's voice layered over theirs, frantic. You've ruined everything. You didn't even talk to us first. I waited for them to breathe. I did talk to you. You called me hysterical. Remember that part? Ingrid, you're overreacting. Dad snapped. It was a misunderstanding. She's fine now, Helena added desperately. Why can't you just drop it? Because, I said, quietly, deliberately. She wasn't fine yesterday. The silence on the line was almost kind. Then Mom started crying, and Dad hung up without another word. I stared at my phone until the screen dimmed, then set it face down on the table. For the first time in my life, the quiet actually felt like mine. I didn't shout. I took action, and the fallout was only just beginning. For 48 hours, I pretended the world had moved on. No phone calls, no headlines, no knock on the door. Piper's color came back. She drew again. And I convinced myself that maybe, just maybe, silence meant safety. It didn't. In my family, calm isn't comfort. It's the pause before something catches fire. I was answering emails when my phone buzzed. A text from a coworker. Hey, saw this online. Thought you'd want a heads up. A link was attached. The headline didn't bother with mystery. Local B&B owners named in police inquiry after child's hospitalization. I clicked it. Police in Harborview confirmed an investigation into a reported neglect incident involving the Taylor family of Meadow Ridge. The 10-year-old girl, said to be a relative, was treated for a severe allergic reaction after being left at a nearby resort. That was it. 20 lines of polite horror, published for breakfast reading. They'd released my parents' and Helena's names. Of course, they had. Arrests weren't made, but the investigation was public record. Halfway down the article, the family's adult daughter, who lives in the city, filed the initial report. Not my name, but it may as well have been printed in bold. I stared at the screen until the words went fuzzy. Across the room, Piper said, "Mom, are you okay?" "Yeah," I said, just reading the news. We were trending by noon. The phone wouldn't stop. Helena first. "Ingrid, what have you done? They used our names. The paper says the business might be investigated. You need to fix this. Call the reporter. Tell them it was a misunderstanding." "I don't fix reality," I said. "You don't even care what this is doing to us? You mean compared to what you did to Piper?" Her breath caught. "You've ruined everything." Click. 10 minutes later, Mom. "Ingrid, please. Reporters are calling the house. Guests are canceling. Your father's blood pressure is through the roof. Maybe he should try empathy," I suggested. "It lowers stress." "Ingrid, you all left her alone, Mom. She almost died. This isn't bad press. This is consequence." She started to cry. I let her finish. Then I hung up. By evening, headlights crawled up the driveway. Of course, they came. The doorbell rang. I opened it. Mom, Dad, Helena. 3 ghosts from the same mistake. Dad's jaw looked wired shut. "You need to fix this." "Evening to you, too," I said, my voice flat. Mom pushed forward, hands clasped. "Sweetheart, people are saying terrible things. You know how gossip spreads." "I do," I replied. Usually after someone does something terrible. Helena's eyes were red. We'll lose everything. The papers quoting old guests. They're saying we abandoned a child like luggage. I raised an eyebrow. Accuracy at last. Ingrid, Mom pleaded. We made a mistake. Everyone does. Some mistakes end with funerals. I said, my voice cutting through the air. You got lucky. Dad's voice rose, simmering with rage. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Finally getting payback. I laughed once, a dry, humorless sound. If this is payback, it's the slowest revenge in history. I just told the truth. Helena stepped closer. Please tell them it was blown out of proportion. Say Piper's fine. She is fine, I said. Thanks to strangers, not family. Dad snapped. You owe us. For what? I asked, looking him dead in the eye. The childhood trauma package, or the monthly payments I already canceled? Their faces froze, the realization hitting them. I don't owe you silence anymore, I said quietly. Mom began to sob. Helena whispered, you're cruel. Maybe, I answered, but at least I'm honest. I closed the door, their voices muffled into the night, fading with the sound of their engine starting. The next morning, a new article appeared. Community reacts to neglect allegations against Seaview B&B. Family. A photo of the guest house sign. Raining on the wood. Quotes from longtime patrons who suddenly remembered red flags that never existed. They seemed strict, always prided themselves on discipline, the kind of recycled virtue that curdles fast. Halfway through, family members close to the situation declined to comment. Good. Silence, finally serving its purpose. By lunch, cancellations stacked up. Travis texted from work. Are you holding up? I answered. Define holding. Piper found me at the table, scrolling through emails from strangers who'd mistaken moral outrage for community service. Grandma called again, she said softly. What did she want? She said you're just tired. That's one way to put it. She said they didn't mean to hurt me. I looked at her drawing. 2 stick figures under an umbrella. One with a blue mask. Do you believe her? She shrugged. I think they think hurting people is teaching them. I nodded. Yeah, and they always call it love. She smiled faintly. We're different. Yeah, I said. That's the point. That night, I deleted the family group chat. No farewell message, just gone. The air in the house shifted. Lighter, cleaner. Downstairs, my phone buzzed again. Another headline. Another echo. I didn't read it. I sat beside Piper's bed, listening to her steady breathing. They'd always said silence was strength. Fine. Let them live with it. For the first time, it finally belonged to me. 6 months later, the world looks different. Quieter. The Seaview bed and breakfast is gone. Foreclosed. Boarded up, the sign hanging crooked in the wind. The last guests checked out right after the article naming them hit. After that, the cancellations never stopped. The investigation wrapped up 2 months ago. Mom, Dad, and Helena were each charged with misdemeanor child endangerment, official language for you left a kid in danger and got caught. They pleaded guilty, avoided jail, and got 12 months probation, 250 hours of community service, a $1,000 fine each, and a mandatory parenting education course. They finished the course last month. I like to imagine them sitting through lectures on empathy and basic decency. Helena and Alan moved 2 towns over, to somewhere with fewer people who recognize their faces. She's working part-time at a diner. He's looking for anything that isn't seasonal. The kids are in a new school, trying to adapt. Mom and Dad stayed behind. Too old, too proud, too broke to move. They live off savings and whatever's left of the furniture. People still nod politely to them at the grocery store, but never stop to chat. I haven't spoken to any of them since that night on my porch. News travels through cousins and gossip. I don't go looking for it. Piper's good. The allergy was nuts. First reaction, lifelong guest. She carries her EpiPen everywhere like it's a badge of honor. She knows now that if something feels wrong, she speaks up. Soft doesn't mean weak, she told me just last week. Travis and I are good, too. Normal, peaceful, even. Sometimes I still hear that line in my head. You don't do that to family. And maybe that's true. But then again, neither do they. So, tell me, what do you think? Did I go too far, or finally far enough? Let me know in the comments below.